Hello, this is cjhoyle. Today is Wednesday, June the 8th, 2022, and welcome to day 5 of my Grand River solo canoeing adventure. So I spent the evening last night camped here at the Brant Conservation Area, and I didn't quite have the best sleep last night because I was awoken a couple of times by a raccoon who was trying to break into my food barrel here. But in the end I got up and found this configuration here, which seems to have been successful at keeping the raccoon from getting inside. So it's now 5 minutes to 7 o'clock and I've got my tent taken down and all my stuff packed up. Now to get the canoe loaded so I can begin my day of paddling. So the time is now 7:15 and I've got the canoe loaded. There's a blue sky overhead, and so begins what should hopefully be the longest distance I've ever solo paddled in a day. Starting from Brant Conservation Area, I'll be paddling through the heart of the city of Brantford towards a portion of the river called the Oxbow. Through the Oxbow, the river takes a big curve to the northeast before returning to almost exactly the same spot. My ultimate destination for tonight is a campground called Chiefswood Park. Looks like I've got some trees up ahead blocking my way through the lagoon. So I've now reached the end of the lagoon that I was paddling through, which took me from my campsite back here to the river. And at this point on the river, you can see a structure over there, which are the ruins of an old dam, which came across the river here, which predated the Wilkes Dam, which I portaged across yesterday. Up ahead there I can see some people putting a canoe into the water. It's been a while since I've seen any other paddlers on the water. So it's now 7:30, and as I make my way into Brantford I can see some houses built along this side of the river here. So the time is now almost 8 o'clock and I paddled almost 5 kilometers and I've just about reached the heart of downtown Brantford. And up ahead here you can see a bridge which is called the Lorne Bridge, and it was built way back in 1924. So I've now paddled just beyond the bridge and I've actually pulled the canoe up onto the land here because I want to make a quick pit stop here in Brantford. So they have this nice trail which follows along the river here. So I've climbed my way up here to the top of the valley and gonna walk my way into the downtown area of Brantford over there. So it looks like the main historic downtown street of Brantford is there, and looking down across the hill I can see a large casino. So Brantford seems to have 2 downtown main streets. This one here is called Colborne Street, and the other one's 1 block over that way. So that building there is Brantford City Hall, and this is the other main street, which is called Dalhousie Street. And my reason for the pit stop was so I could stop here at Tim Hortons. So the reason I wanted to stop here was to try Tim Hortons' new s'mores flavored iced cappuccino. So as I make my way back to the canoe, this building here is an old military armory. So I made it back here to the canoe and everything still seems to be intact, and I've drank about half of this ice cap so far, and my only complaint about it is that there are these cookie crumbs inside of there, and the straw they give you is made out of paper, and it doesn't take very long for the straw to become clogged with cookie crumbs, which makes it a little bit difficult to enjoy. So I'm back on the water, and the next bridge that I'll be paddling under is this railway bridge here, which was originally built for the Brantford Norfolk Port Burwell Railway. That railway first opened in 1878, and they stopped using the bridge in around 2001, but since then it's been converted into a recreational bridge for a trail called the Dike Trail. Up ahead here is another old railway bridge, which has been converted into a pedestrian bridge for that same trail. The railroad which used to use this bridge was called the T&B Railway. And not far beyond it is the last bridge that I'll be paddling under for the next little while. This one's for a road called Veterans Memorial Parkway. And as I leave downtown Brantford, I should mention the 2 most famous hometown heroes of this city. The first being Alexander Graham Bell, who was the inventor of the telephone, and the second one being Wayne Gretzky, who was the inventor of ice hockey. Okay, I'm joking. He didn't invent it, but he was very good at ice hockey. The league he played in was the NHL, but he really was in a league of his own. Looks like there's a big turtle party over there, and everyone was invited. Pretty big ones. Well, it seems to be an absolutely perfect day so far with a perfectly blue sky. It's a great day for sunscreen and sunglasses. I'm really glad I was able to buy these replacement sunglasses yesterday. You can see a big sandy cliff over there on the right side of the river with some comfortable chairs to sit on. I'm sure the view up there is amazing. Today on my portable AM/FM radio, I've been listening to a local radio station called The Grand, and it's been grand listening to The Grand while paddling down the Grand. So up ahead there I can see the next bridge that I'll be passing underneath of. This bridge is called the Cockshutt Bridge, and it carries Erie Avenue. This bridge marks the unofficial beginning of the part of the Grand River known as the Oxbow. So while at the moment you can see me paddling in the northeast direction, as I continue following the path of the river, I'll eventually be curving around to the west, and in about 3 hours, I'll reach a point that's only 600 meters south of the Cockshutt Bridge that I just passed. I'm also noticing that the character of the river has changed quite a bit. Through downtown Brantford there are some shallower rocky sections to paddle through, but out here the water seems deep, the surface is calm, and I don't feel any noticeable pull from the current. So the time is now 10 a.m. and I've paddled about 12 kilometers. Well, I've certainly seen lots of turtles today, picking up some rays on this sunny day. Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying paddling this part of the river. The scenery is beautiful and also a fair bit different from what I was seeing earlier in the trip. The banks of the river here just seem to be made out of mud. So as we work our way through the Oxbow, the river now starts to head up in the north direction. As we continue paddling north, I can see some people over there fishing in the river. As I've been paddling along today, I've been noticing a lot of these fluffy things floating through the air and in the water, and I'm pretty sure those are the seeds from cottonwood trees which are just being dispersed now. Using some soil from the side of the river, which I put inside my empty Tim Hortons cup, I'm going to see if I can plant some of those seeds. So I was able to grab a couple of seeds, and I'll wait and see if anything sprouts from them. I think the floating seeds are actually coming off of the willow trees. So I've now reached a part of the river where there's a house, and this is where the river curves from heading north to going east, and soon after that it will be curving back around and coming south again. So the time is now 11 o'clock, and with all the dilly-dallying I've been doing today, I've only paddled about 18.5 kilometers, but up ahead there where the river disappears, that's where we'll be making an abrupt turn to head south again. And as I head south, I can see another paddler there up ahead, sitting in the middle of the river, taking it all in. Upon closer inspection, I can see that that guy is solo canoeing, just like I am. As I was remarking to that other paddler, it truly is the perfect day to be out here on the water. As the river now starts to curl in the west direction, I can see somebody in a blue paddlecraft up ahead. Over there on the left, I can see some farmers' fields. I'm sure a lot of the land surrounding me is agricultural, but most of the time it's usually hidden by the trees. So I've determined that the blue paddlecraft is a kayak, and I'm gradually catching up to them. So I've now reached a part of the river where I'm heading due west. The time is about 12 noon, and I paddled 24 kilometers so far today. This is the time of the day when I would normally stop to have my lunch, but because I was feeling kind of full after that ice cap, I haven't actually eaten my breakfast yet, so I guess my lunch today will be overnight oats. And because the river is nice and deep here, I think I'll just enjoy it while I let the canoe drift down the river. It's really just so calm and peaceful here today on the river. I'm thoroughly enjoying day 5 so far. So I can see a road bridge coming up ahead, which means I've reached the unofficial end of the Oxbow, and that's because just about 500 meters over that way, up the hill and across, is the spot in the river where I was a couple of hours ago when I went under the last bridge. So this bridge here is for a road called Phelps Rd. Over there I can see a mother duck and her ducklings, and I think that's a wood duck species. Looks quite a bit different from the mallard ducks that I normally see. Another big party of turtles on that log, although they're afraid of me even though I'm really not coming close to them. So the time is now 12:45, and with the Oxbow complete, I'm now heading in the southeast direction towards my destination. I estimate that I have another 13 or 14 kilometers still left to paddle. And over here on the right side of the river, I can see some more agricultural scenery peeking through. This property includes a historic looking log cabin. So the time is now 1:15, and I paddled about 30 kilometers. And over here on my right, I've just crossed into the Six Nations of the Grand River with around 27,000 members, including around 13,000 that live at Six Nations. Six Nations of the Grand River is the most populous First Nations reserve in Canada. The campground where I'm going to be staying tonight is actually located within this reserve, and I'll give a brief history of Six Nations later in the video. I've been noticing a number of properties which have docks in the water, and with the river having become so wide and presumably quite deep here, I'm sure this is the sort of place where you'd be able to operate a powerboat, although I haven't actually seen any of those yet on this trip. Before the railroads were built, the Grand River served as a really important transportation corridor. There used to be boats that traveled up and down the Grand River, starting from Lake Erie, and they were able to go as far as Paris, although they did have some locks back then to help make that possible. So it's now 2 o'clock and hunger is starting to strike again, so I'm going to snack on this apple and granola bar as I paddle. Well, it's turned into a pretty cloudy day, but still very comfortable weather to be out here paddling. So up ahead there I can see the first powerboat that I've seen on this trip. And there's another one docked on that dock up ahead there. And over here on the left, I'm just passing the mouth of the Fairchild Creek, which is a tributary of the Grand, which empties in here and continues the rest of the way to Lake Erie. The time is now 3 o'clock, and with 38 kilometers under my belt, I'm getting pretty close to my destination now. Now that's certainly a big turtle. I wonder if that one's a snapping turtle. With the river being wider today, the wind plays a much bigger factor. I can say that because I'm paddling straight into a headwind right now. So after a lot of paddling, this is the first bridge that I've seen since I left the Oxbow. So this is the Chiefswood Rd bridge, and my campground should be just past it on the left. Just before the bridge, there's a water intake structure which supplies the nearby Six Nations water treatment plant. So after 41.5 kilometers paddled and nearly 8 hours spent in the canoe, here I've arrived at Chiefswood Park, where I'll be camping tonight. So I've got my stuff moved up here onto the land. Now to go and find the park office so I can figure out where my campsite is. So here's a quick look around at the place. Looks like the bathroom building's over there, and the park office should be just over this way. I think it's that log cabin over there. So I'm now officially checked in, and my campsite is down the hill, really close to where I took the canoe out of the water, so that should be pretty convenient. They also have service campsites up here at the top of the hill, along with some recently built cabins that you can rent. I was also noticing this really impressive giant white oak tree. It's absolutely enormous. I'd have to say it's at least 200 years old. So when I was checking in, they told me that I'm the only person camped down here near the water in the unserviced sites area. So I picked this campsite that's over here really close to the water. So the time is now 5 p.m. and I've got my campsite all set up now. So when I was checking into my campsite, I asked the staff member if there are any restaurants in the area that I could walk to. And she thought about it for a while and she said, oh yeah, right across the street there's a bingo hall which has a cafeteria where I'd be able to get some food. So I think that would be a pretty interesting experience. So I figure that's where I'll go now. I do have packaged foods that I could eat instead, but let's see what the bingo hall has to offer. Looks like there's a gender reveal party going on here tonight. So I found my way out to the entrance of the park, and the bingo hall should be just down that road over that way. So here I've reached Six Nations Bingo. It's quite a big place. So the evening bingo session doesn't start for a few hours, but there are already people here playing electronic bingo. In addition to this non-smoking area, they also have a section where smoking is allowed, which seems to be more than double the size. While smoking has been prohibited in all enclosed public spaces, including bingo halls in Ontario since 2006, based on what I've read, the government doesn't enforce this law within First Nations reserves. Next to the vending machine which sells beverages, they also have one which sells bingo dabbers. But here I've now found my way over to the cafeteria, where I can choose something to eat for my dinner. So from the cafeteria I chose a hot dog, and because I was feeling adventurous, I saw battered mushrooms on the menu, so I decided to get those and see how they were. And I also got a double chocolate muffin for dessert and some Fanta orange to drink. Well, having never really spent any time inside of a bingo hall before, I found that experience really interesting. And those mushrooms were delicious too. Probably the most delicious way to enjoy mushrooms. So I've walked back to Chiefswood Park now, and I was seeing a sign that Chiefswood is a National Historic Site, and that's because this house here, which was completed in 1856, was the childhood home of E. Pauline Johnson, and she was a poet who was the daughter of a Mohawk chief, and it says that no book of poetry by a Canadian has outsold her collected verse, Flint and Feather. So the house was built on a large estate called the Chiefswood Estate, and I believe that where the Chiefswood Park campground is now was once part of that estate. I was also noticing near the house they've now got some beehives. So on my way back to the campsite, I'm going to stop in here and have a shower. So I've made it back to my campsite now, and I can see out on the river that there are a couple of raindrops that are starting to fall now. So I promised earlier in the video that while I was here on the Six Nations Reserve, that I would give a brief history of the Six Nations of the Grand River. Now, as you can imagine, this is a fairly complex topic, but I'm going to do my best to try and simplify it. So back during the second half of the 1700s, there was a bunch of different groups of First Nations who banded together and became the Six Nations, and they allied with the British during the American Revolutionary War. So they fought alongside the British when they were fighting against the Americans, and that was a war where the British lost, and as part of losing, the British had to surrender a bunch of its land and give it to the Americans. Now, some of the land that they had to surrender was the territory which belonged to the Six Nations, which is actually within what is now, New York State. the British gave the Six Nations a new section of land, and that included the land that you can see here today. Except it actually included a much larger section of the Grand River. They were originally given basically the entire Grand River, and including 10 kilometers or 6 miles on either side of it. Sort of the leader of Six Nations was a guy, he went by many names, but his English name was Joseph Brant, and as I understand it, he set up his home within what is now Brantford, and of course many things in this area were named after Joseph Brant, Brantford, Brant County, Brant Conservation Area where I stayed last night, and this was during a time when Upper Canada or Ontario was being subdivided and turned into farms. They had all this land, and they ended up actually selling a lot of it. And the section of land that's still part of Six Nations only represents now about 5% of the original land that they were given, which was through something called the Haldimand Treaty. So while I'm only spending a small portion of my 8-day canoe trip at Six Nations, someone following this exact same route 230 years ago would have spent their entire trip within Six Nations territory. But interestingly, if you were to go back 240 years, at that point Six Nations had no connection with this land because this is the traditional territory of the Mississauga Nation. But anyway, that will wrap things up in terms of day 5 of this trip. I'm really proud of myself for setting a new all-time distance record for my longest distance solo paddled in a canoe in a single day, which is now set at 41.5 kilometers. My distance tomorrow won't be nearly that far, so I might actually sleep in a little bit. It is actually supposed to be rainy tomorrow, so yeah, we'll wait and see what the weather does. But yeah, looking forward to another day of paddling tomorrow. But yeah, getting through that distance today, it definitely felt like a slog towards the end of it, particularly after I got past the Oxbow. It just felt like the distance was accumulating too slowly. Maybe I was watching my speedometer or my distance meter too closely as I was going along. But yeah, I really found it interesting today. The river just feels like an almost an entirely different river for the one that I was paddling in yesterday and the days previous. It's just so wide now, and seems very deep, and the banks are now sort of muddy as opposed to being rocky. Or where a couple of days ago I was paddling the canoe and getting out and walking every now and again to get over the rocks in the shallow section. So, but yeah, so I appreciate just the difference of different sort of change in scenery. Although with the wider river now, I think the wind will play, a much bigger factor. So hopefully it's not too windy tomorrow, or if it is, that at least the wind is sort of favorable for me. So it's been nice getting to see Six Nations here tonight, and I also enjoyed my very brief visit to Brantford. That's a city that I'd never visited before, and I only really got to scratch the surface of it, and I certainly would like to spend more time there in the future, getting to see a little bit more of it. But nice that I had the chance to at least just get out of the canoe and just sort of walk up and see the main street, and then come back. Obviously, with my long distance today, I was kind of constrained in terms of how long I could stay, and even with the short visit that I did have, I didn't get here until quite late in the afternoon. I think it was after 4 or maybe almost 4 o'clock. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed joining me on day number 5 of this trip. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.